Hello, people. I'm hoping my mic is picking this up. It seems to be a bit quiet at the moment, but anyway. Hello, people. Happy New Year and all that malarkey. Welcome to the first of Monday Night Moods, where I sit around and read some stories for you. We're going to start off with Paradise Lost, a poem by John Milton. This is found over on Gutenberg Press, as always, and is in the public domain, so always good. This will be a regular thing. I'm not going to read the whole of Paradise Lost today. I'm going to read a few episodes because it's quite a long poem. But yeah, so we shall begin with this today. So grab yourself a drink, water for me. Sit back and enjoy the tales. Of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal task brought death into the world, and all our woe with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seed, singing heavenly muse that on the secret top of Oreb or of Sinai didst inspire that shepherd, who first taught the chosen seed. In the beginning, how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos, or of Sion hill delight thee more, and Siloa's brook that flowed fast by the oracle of God. I thence invoke thy aid to my adventurous song, that with no middle flight intends to soar above the Ionian mount, while it pursues things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. And chiefly thou, O Spirit, that dost prefer before all temples the upright heart and pure. Instruct me, for thou knowest, thou from the first wast present, and with mighty wings outspread, dove-like satest brooding on the vast abyss, and maddest it pregnant. What in me is dark illume? What is low rise and support, that to the highest of the great argument I may attesteth eternal providence? And to justify the ways of God to men, say first, for heaven hides nothing from thy view, nor the deep tract of hell. Say first, what cause moved our grandparents in that happy state, favoured of heaven so highly, to fall off from their Creator and transgress his will, for one restraint, lords of the world besides? Who first seduced them to that foul revolt? The infernal spirit. He it was, whose guile stirred up with envy and revenge, deceived the mother of mankind. What time his pride had cast him out from heaven with all his host of rebel angels, by whose aid aspiring to set him in glory above his peers, he trusted to have equalled the Most High, if he opposed, and with ambition aim, against the throne and monarchy of God, raised impious war in heaven and battle proud, with vain attempt. Him the almighty power hurled headlong flaming from the eternal sky, with hideous ruin and combustion down to bottomless perdition, there to dwell in adamantine chains and penal fire. Who dost defy thy omnipotent to arms, 9 times the space that measures day and night? To mortal men he with his horrid crew lay vanquished, rolling in the fiery gulf, confounded through immortal. But his doom reserved him to more wrath, for now he thought both excuse me. For now he thought both of lost happiness and lasting pain torments him. Round he throws his baleful eyes, that witnessed huge affliction and dismay, mixed with obdurate pride and steadfast hate. At once, as far as angels ken his views, the dismal situation waste and wild, a dungeon horrible on all sides round, as one great furnace flamed, yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible served only to discover sights of woe. Regions of sorrow, doleful shades, where peace and rest can never dwell, hope never comes that comes to all, but torture without end still urges, and a fiery deluge, fed with ever-burning sulphur unconsumed. Such place eternal justice has prepared for those rebellious here in the prison ordained in utter darkness, and their portion set as far removed from God and light of heaven as from the centre thrice to the utmost pole. Oh, how unlike the place from whence they fell, there the companions of his fall, overwhelmed with floods and whirlwinds of tempestuous fire. He soon discerns, and weltering by his side, one next to him excuse me. And weltering by his side, one next himself in power and next in crime, long after known in Palestine, and named Beelzebub, to whom the arch enemy and thence in heaven called Satan, with bold words, breaking the horrid silence, thus began: If thou beest he, but oh, how fallen, how changed from him, who in the happy realms of light, clothed with transcendent brightness, didst outshine myriads through bright. If he, whom mutual league, united thoughts and counsel, equal hope, and hazard in glorious and hazard in the glorious enterprise, joined with me once, now misery hath joined in equal ruin, into what pit thou seest, from what high hath fallen, so much the stronger provide. He with his thunder, and till then he knew the force of those dire arms, yet not for those, nor with the Yet not for those, nor what the potent victor in his rage can else inflict, do I repent or change, though changed in an outward lustre, that fixed mind and high disdain, and from sense of injured merit, that with the mightiest raised me to contend, and to the fierce contention brought along innumerable force of spirits armed, that durst dislike his reign, and me, preferring his utmost power and adverse powers, opposed in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. What about the field be lost? What though the field be lost? All is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate, and courage never to submit or yield. And what else? And what is else not to be overcome? That glory never shall his wrath or might extort from me, to bow and sue for grace with supplicant knee, and defy his power, who from the terror of this arm so late doubted his empire. That were low indeed. That were an ignominy and shame beneath this downfall, since by fate the strength of gods and by his imperial substance cannot fail. Since, though experience of this great event in arms not worse, in foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage by force or guile eternal war irreconcilable to our grand foe, who now triumphs, and in the excessive joy sole reigning holds the tyranny of heaven. So spake the apostate angel, though in pain, vaunting aloud, but racked with deep despair. And him thus answered soon his cold compare: O Prince, O Chief of many throned powers, that led thy embattled seraphim to war under thy conduct, and in dreadful deeds fearless endangered heaven's perpetual king, and put to proof his high supremacy, whether upheld by strength or chance or fate. Too well I see and rue the dire event, that with sad overthrow and foul defeat hath lost us heaven, and all his mighty host in horrible destruction laid thus low, as far as gods and heavenly essences can perish, for the mind and spirit remains invincible, and vigour soon returns. Though all our glory extinct and happy state here swallowed up in endless misery, But what if he, our conqueror, whom I now of force believe almighty, since no less than could have overpowered such force as ours, have left us this our spirit and strength entire, strongly to suffer and support our pains, that we may so suffice his vengeful ire, or do him mightier service as his thralls, but by right of war. Whate'er his business be, here in the heart of hell, to work in fire, or do his errands in the gloomy deep. What can it then avail, yet though yet we feel strength undiminished, or eternal being to undergo eternal punishment? Whereto with speedy words thy arch-fiend replied, falling cherub too weak in miserable doing or suffering. But of this be sure, to do out good never will be our task, but ever to do ill our sole delight, as being the contrary to his high will, whom we resist, in this if this doing well today. Let's make this bigger. If then his providence out of our evil seek to bring forth our labour, must be to pervert that end, and out of good still to find means of evil, which oft times may succeed, so as perhaps shall grieve him, if I fail not and disturb his inmost counsels from their destined aim, but see the angry victor hath recalled his ministers of vengeance and pursuit back to the gates of heaven. The sulphurous hail shot after us in storm, o'erblown hath laid the fiery surge, that from the precipice of heaven received us falling, and the thunder wing and the red lightning in impetuous rage, perhaps hath spent his shafts, and ceases now to bellow through the vast and boundless deep. Let us not slip the occasion, whether scorn or satiate fury yield it from our foe. Seest thou yon dreary plain, forlorn and wild, the seat of desolation, void of light, save what glimmering of these livid flames cast pale and dreadful? Thither let us tend from off the tossing of the fiery waves. Their rest, if any rest can harbour there, and resembling our afflicted powers, consult how we may henceforth most offend. Consult how we may henceforth most offend our enemy, our own loss, how repair, how overcome this dire calamity, what reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not what resolution from despair. Thus Satan talking to his nearest mate, with head uplift above the wave, the eyes that sparkling blazed, his other parts besides, prone on the flood, extended long and large, lay floating many a rood, in bulk as huge as whom the fables name of monstrous size, Titanian or earthborn, the ward on Jove, Briareus or Typhon, whom the den by ancient Tarsus held, or that sea beast Leviathan, which God of all his works created hugest that swim the ocean stream. Him haply slumbering on the Norway formed, the pilot of some small night-foundered skiff, deeming some island oft, as seamen tell. With fixed anchor in his scaly rind, moors to his side under the lee, while night invests the sea and wished morn's delays. So stretched out huge in length the arch-fiend lay, chained on the burning lake, nor ever thence has risen or heaved his head. But that will and his high permission of all-ruling heaven left him at large to his own dark designs, that with reiterated crimes he might heap on himself damnation, while he sought evil to others, and enraged might see how all his malice served but to bring forth infinite goodness, grace, and mercy shewn. On man by him seduct, but on himself treble confusion, wrath, and vengeance poured. Forthwith upright he rears from off the pool, his mighty statue, Statue on each hand, the flames driven backward slope their pointing spires, and round in billows leaveth mist a horrible veil. Then with expanded wings he stares his flight, aloft incumbent on the dusky air, that he felt unusual weight till on dry land he lights, if it were land that ever burned with solid as the lake with liquid fire, and such appeared in hue. And when the force of subterranean winds transports a hill torn from Pelarus, or the shattered side of thundering Aetna, whose combustible and fueled whose combustible and fueled entrails, thence conceiving fire, sublimed with mineral fury, aid the winds, and leave the singed bottom all involved with stench marks and smoke. Such resting found the soul of unblessed feet. Him followed his next mate, both glorying to have scrapped the Stygian flood as gods, and by their own recovered strength, not by the sufferance of supernal power. Is this the region, this the soil, the clime? Said then the lost archangel, this the seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for that celestial light. Be it so, since he who is now sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is his best, whom reason hath equaled. Force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields, where joy for ever dwells. Hail, horrors, hail, infernal world, and thou profundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. This mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. What matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be, all but less than he whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here, for his envy will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. But wherefore let But wherefore let we then, our faithful friends, thy associates and compartners of our loss, lie thus astonished on thy obvious pool, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansion, or once more with railed arms to try what may be yet regained in heaven, or what more lost in hell. So Satan spake, and him Beelzebub thus answered, leader of those armies bright, which but the omnipotent none could have foiled. If once they hear the voice, their liveliest pledge of hope in fears and dangers, heard so oft in worst extremes, and on the perilous edge of battle when it raged, in all assaults their surest signal, they will soon resume, new courage and revive, though now they lie grovelling and prostrate on yon lake of fire. As we erewhile astounded and amazed, no wonder fallen such a pernicious higheth. He scarce and ceases when the superior fiend was moving toward the shore, his ponderous shield and ethereal temper, massy large and round, behind him cast the broad circumference, hung on his shoulders like the moon, whose orb through the optic glass of Tuscan artists views at evening from the top of Fisol, or in Valdano to descry new lands, rivers, or mountains in her spotted globe. His spear to equal with the tallest pine hewn on Norwegian hills, to be the mast of some great admiral, where but a wand he walked with to support uneasy steps over the burning marl, not like those steps of heaven's azure, and the torrid clime smote on him sore besides, vaulted with fire. Now Natheless, he so endured till on the beach of that inflamed sea he stood and called his legions, angel forms who lay interest thick as autumnal leaves that strowl the brooks in Vallombrosa, where the Ithurian shades afloat with the fierce winds Orion armed hath vexed the Red Sea coast, whose waves overthrew Busiris and his Memphian chivalry, while with profundus hatred they pursued the sojourners of Goshen, who beheld from the safe shore their floating carcasses, and the broken chariot wheels so thick bestrown abject and lost lay these, covering the flood. Under amazement of their hideous change, he called so loud that all the hollow deep of hell resounded. Princes, potentates, warriors, the flower of heaven once yours, now lost, if such astonishment as this can seize eternal spirits, or have ye chosen this place, after the toil of battle, to repose your wearied venture? For the ease you find to slumber here, as in the vales of heaven? Or in this abject posture have ye sown to adore the conqueror, who now beholds cherub and seraph rowling in the flood with scattered arms and ensigns, till anon his swift pursuers from heaven's gate discern this advantage, and descending treaders down, thus drooping, or with linked thunderbolts transfix us to the bottom of this gulf. Awake, arise, or be ever fallen. They heard and were abashed, and up they sprung upon the wing, and when men wont to watch on duty, sleeping found by whom they dread, rouse and bestir themselves o'er well awake. Nor did they not perceive the evil plight in which they were, or the fierce plains not feel. Yet to their general's voice they soon obeyed innumerable. And as the potent rod of Amram's son in Egypt's evil day waved around the coast, up called a pitchy cloud of locusts, warping on the eastern wind that all the realm of impious Pharaoh hung like night, and darkened all the land of Nile. So numberless were those bad angels seen hovering on wing under the cope of hell, twixt upper, nether, and sundering fires, till, as a signal given, thus uplifted spear of the great Sultan wavering to direct thy course, in even balance down they light. In even balance down they light on firm brimstone, and fill all the plain, a multitude, like which the populous north poured never from her frozen loins, to pass Rhine or the Danube, where her barbarous sons came like a deluge on the south, and spread beneath Gibraltar to the Libyan sands. Forthwith, from every squadron, and each band, the heads and leaders thither, where stood thy great commander, godlike shapes and forms excelling human, princely dignities and powers that erst in the heaven sat on the thrones, though of their names in heavenly records now be no memorial, blotted out and rust by their rebellion from the books of life, nor had they yet among the sons of Eve got them new names, till wandering o'er the earth, through God's high sufferance from the trial of man, by falsities and lies, the greatest part of mankind they corrupted to forsake God their Creator, and the invisible glory of him that made them, to transform oft to the image of a brute, adorned with gay religions full of pomp and gold, and devils to adore for deities. Then were they known to men by various names and various idols through the heathen world. Say Muse, their names then known, who first, who last roused from slumber on that fiery couch. At their great emperor's call, as next in worth, came singly where he stood on the bare strand, while the promiscuous crowd stood yet aloof. The chiefs were those who, from the pit of hell, roaming The chief were those who, from the pit of hell, roaming to seek their prey on earth, just fixed their seats long after next the seat of God, their altars by his altar. Gods adored among the nations round, and durst abide Jehovah, thundering out of Zion. Throned between the cherubim, yeah, often placed within his sanctuary, if self their shrines abominations, and with cursed things his holy rites and solemn feasts profaned, and with their darkness durst affront his light. First, Moloch, horrid king besmeared with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears. Through the noise of the drums and timbrels loud, their children's cries unheard, and passed through fire to his grim idol. Him, the Ammonite, worship in Rabbah and her watery plain, in Argob and in Bashan, to the stream of utmost Arnon. Nor content with such audacious neighbourhood, the wisest heart of Solomon he led by fraud to build his temple right against the temple of God on that uproarious hill, and made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnon, Tophet thence, and black Gehenna called, the type of hell. Next, Chemos, the obscene dread of Moab's son, from Ara to Nebo, and wild of the southmost Abarim, in Hesebon and Heranaum, Seon's realm, beyond the flowery dale of Sibam, clad with vines, and Eliel, to the asphatic pool, Peor his other name, when he enticed Israel in Sittam on their march from the Nile to do him wanton rites, which cost them woe. Yet thence his lustful orgies he enlarged even to that hill of scandal, by the grove of Moloch homicide, lust hard by hate, till good Josiah drove them thence to hell. With these came they who from the boarding flood of the old Euphrates to the brook that parts Egypt from the Syrian ground, and general names of Balaam and Ashtaroth, those male, these feminine. For spirits, when they please, can either sex assume, or both so soft and uncompounded in their essence pure, not tid or manacled with joint or limb, nor founded on the brittle strength of bones, like cumbrous flesh, but in what shape they choose, dilated or condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purposes and works of love or enmity fulfill. For those the race of Israel oft forsook their living strength, and unfrequented left his righteous altar, bowing lowly down to bestial gods, for which their heads as low as bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear of despicable foes. With those in troop came Ashtoreth, whom the Phoenicians called Astarte, queen of heaven, with crescent horns, to whose bright image nightly by the moon Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs. In Sion also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain, built by that uxorious king, whose heart, though large, beguiled by fair idolattresses, fell to idols foul. Thammuz came next behind, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsels to lament his fate in amorous ditties all a summer's day, while smooth Adonis from his native rock rang purple to the sea, supposed with blood of Thammuz yearly wounded. The love tale infected Sion's daughters with like heat, whose wanton passions in the sacred porch Ezekiel saw, when by the visions led his eyes surveyeth the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. Next came one who mourned in earnest, when the captive ark maimed his brute image, head and hands lopped off in his own temple, on the Grunsel edge where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. Dagon his name, sea monster, upward man and downward fish. Yet had his temple high reared in Azotus, dreaded through the coast of Palestine, in Gath and Ascalon, and Acharon and Gaza's frontier bounds. Him followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus, on the fertile banks of Abana and Phraphir. lucid streams. He also, against the house of God was bold, a leper once he lost and gained a king. Ahaz, his Scottish conqueror, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace for one of Syrian mode, whereon to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. After these appeared a crews who under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train, with monstrous shapes and sorcerers abused fanatic Egypt and her priests, to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. Nor did Israel scrape the infection when their bowed gold compassed the calf of Oreb, and the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his maker to the grazed ox Jehovah, who in one night, when he passed from Egypt marching, equalled with one stroke both her firstborn and her bleating gods. Belial came last. Then whom a spirit more lewd fell from heaven, or more gross to love vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked, yet more oft than he in temples and altars, when the priests turn atheist, as he did Eli's son, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers, and injury and outrage, and when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flown with innocence and wine, witness the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when hospitable Doris yielded their matrons to prevent worse rape. These were the prime, in order and in might. The rest were long to tell, though far renowned, the Aenonian gods of Javan's issue held gods, yet confessed later than heaven and earth their boasted parents, Titan heaven's firstborn, with his enormous brood and birthright seized. But younger Saturn, he from mightier Jove, his own and Rhea's son, like measure found. So Jove usurping reigned there first in Crete and Eden known. Thence on the snowy top of a cold Olympus ruled the middle air, the highest heaven, or on the Delphian cliff, or in the Dodona, and through the bounds of the Doric land, or with the Saturn old fled over the Adria to the Hesperian fields, and the oar of Celtic roamed the utmost isles. All of these and more came flocking, but with looks downcast and damp, yet such wherein appeared obscure some glimpse of joy, to have found their chief, not in despair, to have found themselves not lost in loss itself, which on his countenance cast like doubtful hue, but he his wonted pride soon recollecting, with high words that bore semblance of worth not substance, gently raised their fainted courage and dispelled their fears. Then straight commands that at warlike sound of trumpets loud and clarions be upread his mighty standard. That proud honour claimed Azazel as his right, a cherub tall, who forthwith from the glittering staff unfurled the imperial ensign, which full height advanced shone like a meteor streaming to the wind, with gems and golden lustre rich emblazed. Sephiric arms and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sounds. At the universal host upsent a shout that tore hell's concave, and beyond frightened the reign of chaos and old night. All in the moment, through the gloom were seen 10,000 banners rise into the air, with orient colours waving, and with them rose a forest huge of spears, and thronging helms appeared, and serried shields in thick array, of depth immeasurable. Anon they move in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mood of flutes, and soft recorders, such as raise to highest of noblest temper, hearers old and arming to battle. And instead of rage, deliberate valour breathed, firm and unmoved with dread of death, to flight or foul retreat. nor wanting power to mitigate and assuage with solemn touches troubled thoughts and chase anguish and doubt and fear and sorrow and pain for mortal or immortal minds. Thus, they, breathing united force with fixed thought, moved on in silence to soft pipes that charmed their painful steps over the burnt soil, and now advanced in view they stand at horrid front, of dreadful length and dazzling arms in guise of warriors of old, with oldered spears and shield, awaiting what command their mighty chief had to impose. He through the armed files dart his experienced eye, and soon traverse the whole battalion views, their order due, their visage and statues as of gods, their number last he sums, and now his heart distends with pride, and hardening in his strength glories, for never since created man met such embodied force as named with these could merit more than that small infantry warred on by cranes. Though all the giant brood of Phlegra with the heroic rage were joined that fought at Thebes and Ilium, on each side, mixed with auxiliar gods, and what resounds in fable or romance of Uther's sons, bear grit with the British, Armoric knights, and all who since baptized or infidel jousted in Asperamont or Montalban, Damasco or Morocco or Trebizond, or whom Biserta sent from Afrique shore with the when Charlemagne with all the peerage fell by Fontarabia. Thus, far beyond compare of mortal powers, yet observe the dread commander, he above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminent, stood like a tower, if his form had yet not lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruined, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the sun new risen looks through the horizontal misty air, shorn of his beams, or from behind the moon, in dim eclipse disastrous twilight sheds. On half of the nations, with the fear of change, perplexes monarchs, darkened so, yet shone above them all the archangel, but his face, deep scars of thunder, the interest and care sat on his faded cheek, but under brows of doubtless courage and considerate pride waiting revenge cruelled his eye, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold. The fellows of crime, the followers rather, far other once beheld in bliss, condemned for ever now, and to have their lot in pain, millions of spirits for his fault amerced of heaven, and from eternal splendours flung for his revolt, yet faithful how they stood, their glory withered. And when heaven's fire hath scathed the forest oaks or mountain pines, with singed top their stately growth, though bare, stands of the blasted heath, he now prepared to speak. And we shall hear that speak in a minute. Sorry about that. He now prepared to speak. Let's move my microphone closer again. He now prepared to speak, whereat that doubled ranks they bend from wing to wing, and half enclose him round with all his peers. Attention held them mute. Thrice he essays Thrice he essayed, and thrice, in spite of scorn, tears such as angels weep burst forth. At last, words interwove with sighs found out their way. O myriads of immortal spirits, O powers matchless, but with thy Almighty, and that strife was not inglorious, though the event was dire, as this place testifies, and with this dire change, hateful to utter, but with the power of mind foreseeing and presaging from the depth of knowledge, past and present, could have feared. How such united force of gods, how such as stood like these, could ever know repulse? For who can yet believe, though after loss, that all these puissant legions, whose exile hath emptied heaven, shall fail to reascend, self-raised, and repossess their native seat? For me, be witness all the host of heaven, if counsels different, or danger shunned, by me have lost our hopes, but he who reigns monarch in heaven, till then as one secure sat on his throne, upheld by old repute, consent, or costume, and his regal state put forth at full, but still his strength concealed, which tempted our attempt and wrought our fall. Henceforth his might we know, and know our own, so as not neither to provoke or dread. New war provoked, our better part remains, to work in close design by fraud or guile, what force and effected not, that he no less at length from us may find, who overcomes by force hath overcome but half his foe. Space may produce new worlds whereof so rife there went a fame in heaven that he ere long intended to create, and there implant a generation, whom his choice regard should favour equal to the sons of heaven. Thither, if but shall be perhaps our first eruption, thither or elsewhere, for this infernal pit shall never hold celestial spirits in bondage, nor the abyss long under darkness cover. But though these thoughts, full of counsel, must mature, peace is despaired, for who can think submission? War then, war, open and understand, must be resolved. He spake to confirm, his words outflew millions of flaming swords, drawn from the thighs of mighty cherubim. The sudden blaze far round illumined hell, highly they raised against the highest, and fierce with grasped arms, clashed on their surrounding shields the din of war, hurling defiance towards the vault of heaven. There stood a hill, not far, whose grisly top belched fire and rolling smoke. The rest entire shone with a glossy scruff, and doubted sign that in his womb was hid metallic ore, the work of sulphur. Thither winged with speed a numerous brigade hastened, as when bands of pioneers with spades and pickaxe armed foreran the royal camp, to trench a field or cast a rampart. Mammon led them on, Mammon, the least erected spirit that fell from heaven, for ever in heaven. Mammon led them on, Mammon, the least erected spirit that fell from heaven, for even in heaven his looks and thoughts were always downward bent, admiring more the riches of heaven's pavement, trodden gold, than aught divine or holy else enjoyed in vision beatific. By him first men also, and by his suggestion taught, ransacked the centre with impious hands, rifled the bowels of their mother earth for treasures better hid. Soon had his crew opened into the hill a spacious wound and digged out the ribs of gold. Let none admire the riches grow in hell. That soil may best deserve the Cretaceous bane. And here let those who boast in mortal things and wondering tell of Babel, and whose works of Memphian kings learn how their greatest moments of frame and strength and art are easily outdone by spirits reprobate, and in an hour, what in an age they with incessant toil and hands innumerable scarce perform, nigh on the plain in many cells prepared, that underneath had veins in liquid fire sluiced from the lake a second multitude, with wondrous art founded the massive ore, severing each kind and scummed the bullion dross. A third as soon has formed within the ground, of various mould, and from the boiling cells, by strange conveyance filled each hollow nook, as in an organ from one blast of wind to many a row of pipes that sound bored breaths, anon out of the earth a fabric huge rose like an exhalation, with the sound of dulcet symphonies and voices sweet, built like a temple, with pilasters round were set, and Doric pillars overlaid with golden architraves, nor did nor did there want cornice or frieze with bossy sculptures graven. The roof was fettered gold. Not Babylon nor great Al Cairo such magnificence equalled in all their glories, to enshrine Belus or to enshrine Belus or Serapis, the gods, or seat the kings where Egypt and Assyria strove in wealth and luxury. The ascending pile stood fixed her stately height, and straight the doors opening their brazen folds discover wide within her ample spaces over the smooth and level pavement. From the arched roof, pedant by subtle magic, many a row of starry lamps and blazing cressets fed with naphtha and asphaltus yielded light as from a sky. The hasty multitude admiring entered, and the work some praise and some the architect. His hand was known in heaven by many a towered structure high, where sceptred angels held their residence and sat as princes, whom the supreme king exalted to such power and gave to rule, each in his hierarchy the orders bright, nor was his name unheard of, unadored in ancient Greece, and the Ausonian land men called him Mulciber. And how he fell from heaven they fabled, thrown by angry Jove, sheer over the crystal battlements. From morn to noon he fell, from noon to dewy eve, a summer's day, with the setting sun dropped from the zenith like a falling star. On Lemnos the Aegean lie, thus they relate, erring, for he with his rebellious rout fell long before, nor aught availed him now to have built in heaven high towers, nor did he scrape by all his ensigns, but was heading sent with his industrious crew to build in hell. Meanwhile the winged heralds by command of sovereign power, with the awful ceremony of trumpets sound, throughout the host proclaim a solemn council forthwith to be held at Pandemonium, the high capital of Satan and his peers. Their summons called from every and band squared regiment, by place or choice the worthiest. They anon with hundreds and with thousands trooping came attended. All access was thronged, the gates and porches wide. But chief the spacious hall, though like a covered field, were champions bold, wont ride in armed, and at the Soldan's chair defied the best of Panian chivalry to mortal combat or career with lance. Thick swarmed both on the ground and in the air, brushed with the hiss and rustling wings, as bees in springtime with the sun, with tireless rides, pour forth their populous youth and bout the hive in clusters. They among fresh dews and flowers fly to and fro, or on the smooth plank, the suburb of their straw-built citadel, now rubbed with boom, expiate and confer their state affairs. So thick the airy crowd swarmed and was strained, still the signal given. Behold, a wonder! They but now who seemed in bigness to surpass earth's giant suns, now less the smallest dwarves in narrow room throng numberless, like the Pygmean race beyond the Indian mount, or the fairy elves whose midnight revels by a forest side, or a fountain from belated peasant sees, or dreams he sees, while overhead the moon sits arbitress. While overhead the moon sits arbitress, and nearer to the earth wheels her pale course, they on their mirth and dance intent with joyous music charm his ear. At once with joy and fear his heart rebounds. Thus incorporeal spirits to the smallest forms reduced their shapes immense, and were at large, though without number still amidst the hall of that infernal court. But far within, and in their own dimensions like themselves, the great Sephiric laws of cherubim, in close recess and secret conclave sat 1,000 demigods on golden seats, frequent and full. After short silence, then, and summons read, the great consult began. Thus ends the first book of Paradise Lost. We shall do book 2 next week. I was going to read book 2 today, but as you can probably hear, my voice is not great. I've not been particularly well over the last couple of weeks, so yeah, we shall read book 2 next week, everyone. So those of you that will listen to this at some point, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know. If not, I'll still continue reading it. Thank you very much, and goodbye, my friends.